Hello everyone, I'm just kidding. Hi people. Come the Burning Crusade, it seems like almost everyone is planning on grinding their way to 70 through dungeons. It has several benefits, it's good reputation with the necessary factions, and it rewards you with pretty good gear. But it also allows you to avoid almost all annoyance with the open world, much less griefing, no fighting over quest mobs or items, and so on and so forth. So when grinding these dungeons, and more specifically grinding them as a restoration druid, which specs should you go for? How should you heal? What should your overall playstyle be? Should you bring any special consumables? All this and more in the Restoration Druid's Guide to Dungeon Grinding. To start out with, we'll quickly go over which spells you'll be using while dungeon leveling. Your main healing spells will be Rejuvenation and Regrowth, and once you learn Life Bloom at 64, that one as well. I'd also recommend you to bind Tranquility, as it is an amazing AoE heal. Make sure to pop Iron Bark before using it though to fully avoid pushback. Always keep max rank Rejuvenation up on the tank, as well as a max rank Regrowth healing over time until 64. But make sure to wait a bit with casting the Regrowth to make use of the direct healing part as well. Once you get Life Bloom, use that one and max rank Rejuvenation on the tank. You can either stack Life Bloom 3 times and then keep it rolling, or simply use one application and allow it to bloom before refreshing. Note that only the healing over time part is increased by additional applications. The bloom portion is unaffected by the number of stacks of Life Bloom. You basically heal damage dealers the same way, but less healing should be required. In most situations, a max rank Rejuvenation should be more than enough. Also, depending on your build, you might not even cast Fairy Fire whatsoever. But I'll get into the specs and what's unique about the respective playstyles later on. Another spell dependent on your build is Healing Touch. Either you use it with Nature Swiftness, or you won't use it at all. Yet another spell that fits into this category is Hurricane. It deals great AoE damage as well as reducing mobs' attack speed by 25%, but you cannot cast it in Tree of Life. With the base spells out of the way, we're going to look into the talents. There are essentially two builds you might want to consider, one standard and one more specialized for well-geared druids with certain group compositions. A build that also has the option for very weird and quirky things that might actually be quite helpful. I don't know really, I haven't tried it yet. Regardless, we'll start out with the more standard build. The standard build is probably the best one for most druids. One of its main strengths is its mana efficiency, and when combined with Innervate, you can really keep going without drinking for a long time. It is essentially a deep resto build with some choices that might seem odd at first, but I'll comment on the things I think seem odd or might not make full sense at first glance. The rest should be self-explanatory. Already at the second row, I'd recommend you to fully skip Naturalist. The coefficient for the useful ranks of Healing Touch are already heavily nerfed with the downrank penalties, and on top of that, you can't even cast Healing Touch while in Tree of Life. And I would absolutely not recommend leaving Tree form to use Nature Swiftness and Healing Touch macro. Just use a Nature Swiftness and a Regrowth macro instead. Instead, on the second row, I would recommend you to fill out both Nature's Focus and Natural Shapeshifter. We will need those points to get further down. Personally, I really like Omen of Clarity. A free max rank Regrowth will help quite a bit with preserving mana and reducing the amount of mana bricks. Once you've spent 41 points and reached Tree of Life, you can start spending the remaining points more freely. Personally, I don't value Natural Perfection very high, mainly because most of your healing is unable to crit anyway, HOTS you know, and hopefully you will not experience many reduced damage procs from getting critically hit. Most attacks should be on the tank, you know. Either you should pop down into balance and reach for Brambles and possibly Insect Swarm, or go for the reduced healing from Subtlety. I've heard quite a lot of talk about healing threat being a bigger issue in the Burning Crusade, but I'm a bit skeptical about it. I guess you'll find out soon. And actually, you don't even have to spend the remaining 10 points at level 60. You could do a couple of runs and see for yourself whether reduced threat might be valuable. You won't be able to reach Brambles until 61 anyway, and that's like the first next talent that might actually be beneficial for your healing. When it comes to Swift Mend, I would recommend you to use it on a max rank regrowth or max rank rejuvenation before the final tick goes out. It's one of the cheapest sources of healing you have, should the rejuvenation and regrowth combo not be enough. Avoid consuming freshly casted HOTS unless it is an emergency. Tree of Life should be given some attention. It gives your party an aura that increases their healing received by 25% of your total spirit, as well as reducing the mana cost of your HOTS by 20%. However, it reduces your movement speed by 20%, and more importantly, it heavily limits which spells you can cast. In Tree of Life, you can cast Rejuvenation, Life Bloom, Regrowth, Swift Mend, Innervate, Abolish Poison, and Battle Res. Come to think about it, I don't even know if you can use Iron Bark in this form. What I do know is that you can't use Remove Curse, which might be a very big deal. Also, you can't use Verifier either. A tank with a 50% reduction in healing received needs a decurse ASAP, and if you don't have a mage in your party, you will have to leave Tree of Life and decurse yourself, which is quite awkward. If you know that the mobs will apply nasty curses, I'd recommend to just stay out of Tree of Life until you're past that part of the dungeon. Shifting back and forth is annoying, costs you mana, and shifting into any form will trigger the global cooldown, so it'll take time as well. Finally, try and always melee a mob to fish for clearcast procs, as well as adding 50 DPS to the total damage done. Anyway, that was pretty much the basics of deep resto healing. The more specialized build trades in healing and some mana efficiency, although not much really, for more utility, better potential DPS output, as well as improved group damage output. It is also a build you should only consider running if the group is more melee heavy. Essentially, in this build, you reach down in the balance tree to get both improved Fairy Fire and Dream States. Fairy Fire will first of all actually be used in this build, but it will also be heavily buffed with the 3% hits for physical damage, which is quite a big deal. For the first 4 rows, you essentially only grab talents which increases your potential damage output. There are no talents affecting healing yet. However, at the 5th row, you should grab everything. The 9% reduced mana cost reduces the mana efficiency gap between this build and Deep Resto, and the Luther Galen's talent basically gives you the equivalent of the Spirit Healing Power Aura from the Tree of Life. You will not, however, gain anything equivalent to Empowered Rejuvenation. Get Balance of Power for the increased spell hit chance, and finally, grab the full improved Fairy Fire as well as Dream State. And this is where the quirky part comes in. It might actually be beneficial for you, from a healing perspective, to grab Moonkin form. I'll get back into that in just a second. I'm just gonna finish the talent build, with a few restoration points left to spend. You should essentially grab the exact same talents as you would in Deep Resto, down to and including 3 or 4 points in Gift of Nature. You might be tempted to grab the Naturalist talent instead of Nature's Focus, as you aren't in Tree of Life, meaning you can use Healing Touch. But beware that the coefficients for the useful ranks of Healing Touch, meaning rank 3 and rank 4, are quite bad. Rank 3 will only have a coefficient of 0.23 at 60, moving down to 0.2 at 70. Meanwhile, rank 4 goes from 0.44 at 60 to 0.38 at 70. Now, the higher ranks of Healing Touch would work just fine, it's just that they're so damn slow with a casting speed of 3 seconds with talents. Such a slow heal makes you quite clumsy and slow pace in your healing, making it difficult to react fast enough when sudden damage goes out. Now, the Boomkin form. Boomkins have a special passive which give their auto attacks a very high chance to regenerate mana based on attack power. The slower the weapon, the higher the proc rate, with something like 15 procs per minute. If you should find yourself in a situation where almost no healing is required for maybe 5 to 10 seconds, and you have something to attack, then jumping into Moonkin form, equipping an attack power weapon, preferably something like the End of Dreams, which gives a big chunk of attack power, that might actually restore quite a lot of mana to you. I haven't tried this out, and I don't really know whether there are many situations where this might actually work, but there seems to be potential. With the natural shapeshifter talent, Munkin form is only 191 mana at level 60. I'm going to have to make another video about this, but anyway, moving on for now. With this build, you should basically heal the same way you did in the Deep Resto build, except for replacing Swiftmend with something more suitable, like a Regruff. I would not recommend spamming Fire too much, but I would however recommend you to do the pulling with it, as your healing over time spells allows you to move without almost any effect on your healing output. It makes you the perfect puller. Make sure to keep your buffs active and smack away in melee range for the occasional clearcast proc as well. But like I mentioned before, this build does less healing output than Deep Resto, and it's only really helpful if you play in a melee heavy party and you have decent gear. Finally, let's have a quick peek at consumables. Besides a big amount of regents, you might want to stack up on major mana potions as well, and why not some weapon oils on top of that. If you want to go harder, there is always the Mage Blood Elixir as well, but try and use Innervate on cooldown to keep mana breaks and mana potion consumables at a minimum. And honestly, I feel like that's all that there's worth saying about the consumables. You could of course grab like the Flask of Distilled Wisdom if you want to go really hardcore. Anyway, that was all from me for now. I hope you found this video useful. Feel free to join my Discord Cloudy Days, link in the description, should you have any questions. I'll be way quicker to answer there. Anyhow, I'll be back soon with another video, and until then, see ya!